Hello and welcome to this sixth recording in the Azure Demo series. So this particular demo is focused on Azure App Service and in particular the Web App Service. So we'll be demonstrating different aspects of the Azure App Service. So things like creating an Azure Web App or Azure Web App, adding deployment slots to it, publishing code to the web app using Visual Studio or via a publishing file. So publishing code to the staging or to a staging deployment slot, and then swapping both the staging and the production. And then we'll demonstrate how we can use that to roll back if there were to be errors or mistakes also. So then finally, we'll demonstrate the deployment and the configuration of the Azure Traffic Manager. So most likely this will be separate videos to avoid it getting too long, but let's see what we're going to be covering today anyway. So if you're following the lab instructions that we've shared, the Microsoft Learning instructions, that's lab number 5. I go back under the instructions directory, and that will be lab AK05, and that's talking about implementing the Azure App Service. So that's our focus for today. Also, let me bring up the goals for what we're covering. So to begin with, we'll start by creating an Azure web app, and we'll create the new web app in this resource group here. And then we'll add a deployment slot and then verify that it was successfully created, and then we'll configure the deployment credentials. So let's go ahead and accomplish the first goal, create a new Azure web app. If you're not already logged into your lab VM, it's a good time to log into it now. So I'm logged into my lab VM and I'm logged into the Azure portal. So what I'll do is I'll click on new and then look for web plus mobile, and then click web app. So then in the app name, I'll need to type something unique. It has to be unique for this DNS zone, whatever name I type. So if I type in DO Azure Demo 01. So DO Azure Demo 01, actually I'll bring up Notepad and just save these names in the Notepad. And have this suffix also. Okay, so subscription, I'll leave my subscription. Resource group, I'll create a new one, but it will be a different name. So if I get a name from my lab document and put that name there. For the OS, I'll leave that as Windows, not Linux. For the app service plan, I'll go ahead and create a new one. So for the name of the app service plan is essentially definition of the web server farm that will be hosting this web service that we're deploying. So it also includes other things like the features that we have access to and all the other stuff. So if you're not too familiar, just watch out for the Hangout series. Just look for the Hangout series for this particular module, and then we'll explain everything there. Location, I will change that to West Europe because that's closer to me. And pricing tier, I'll change that from D1 shared. I'll change that to S1 standard. I'll click on that and then click select. So as you can see here, if I go back here and if I look at S1 standard, that tells me like the features that are available to me. So that's defined by the app service plan. I'm going to get a machine that's one core 1.75. If I want to scale, I'm going to scale this to this instance. So and then I get up to 10 instances that I can scale to of this particular size. Daily backup, deployment slots, traffic manager. So all those are available are the features that we want to demonstrate. So select that, and then I'll click OK to that. Application Insights, I'll leave that off for now. I'll leave it as a default, and then click on Create. So this will begin the process of creating an Azure web app. So this should not take too long to create from my experience, but I'll still pause the recording. Once it finished creating, I'll come back and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so excuse me, so the deployment completed now. If I click on that, you can see it's completed. I can either go to the resource to go directly to the resource. I can click on App Services here, or if I don't have this on the left pane, I can click More Services, look for App Services, and then click on it. So I'll just go ahead and click on App Services there, and I can see my new app service. If I click on my new app service, here are some of the settings that I have. One of them is deployment slot. So if I go to the next task that we're doing, we'll be adding a deployment slot to our web app, and we'll call it staging. So that's what we'll do next. So if I click on deployment slot here, and then click on add slot, and the name staging. And I'm not going to be changing this, so I'm not going to be cloning any configuration. So if I just click OK to that, that will create my new deployment slot that we can deploy code into also. I'll pause the recording, wait for that to finish, and then I'll come back once it's finished. Okay, so that's finished now. I can see my deployment slot is running. So a deployment slot is essentially an instance of web app service also. So if I click on that, you can see I have similar settings to what I had earlier in the web app itself in this deployment slot. So we'll get into this a bit more. But for now, what I want to do is see how I can view this through PowerShell. So if I clear the screen and I'll log into my Azure account via PowerShell. O4. Put in my password and I'll get my Azure subscription. I don't need to, but in case you have multiple subscriptions and you want to deploy your resource or you want to target a particular subscription, you'll have to first of all get your subscription and then get the ID of the subscription that you want to make the target, and then use that to set it. So what I'll do is I'll run this command to get my Azure web app. So that's get Azure AVM web app, and I specified the resource group that it was deployed into. Then if I press enter, and that goes ahead and gets information about my web app and displays that to me. So this is the web app that we created earlier, by the way. So the other command that I'll run is this. Get Azure AVM web app slot. Specify my resource group name, and then here I'll change this to be the name of my web app. So let's go get the name of my web app, which is this. And I'll put that in there. So get Azure AVM web app slots, resource group name, and then name of the web app. And if I press enter to that, and you can see here's my staging deployment slot. So we can view this using PowerShell also. We could have created it using PowerShell also, but just to show that we can use either or any one that we prefer. So the very last task that we'll do in this particular exercise would be to configure deployment credentials. So if we're going to be using any form of deployment using Git or using FTP, or even in our case that will be using a publishing file, we would need to configure our deployment credential. And this one I'll explain to you how to do that. So if I go back under my web app itself, again, if I need to go into App Service, select your web app, and then you see deployment credentials there. You can click on it. So here is where we can set our deployment username and our deployment password. So one thing to note is that this name has to be unique. So if I just use any name, like, I'm not sure if I've already used that before. So I've not used that before, but that's not even what I'll be using. I'll just be using the name of my web app. And then I'll specify a password. and then I'll go ahead and save that. And that will be the deployment credentials that I'll need if I'm doing Git or FTP deployment later, not just for FTP, but for Git also. So next thing that we'll do, let's bring up our steps that we're following. We're going to be deploying codes to this web app. And for us to be able to deploy codes to it, there are different methods that we can use. Again, if you're not familiar with that, refer to the Hangout service where we do the theory part of this. So there we explain things. This is just pure demonstration, we're not explaining and going in depth in stuff. That's for the Hangout series. Deploying a web app, there are different methods we can use. One of the methods is we can publish using web deploy that Visual Studio uses, or something like Web Matrix can also use something like web deploy also. But in some cases, we can use a publishing profile. We don't have to, especially with the integration that tools like Visual Studio have with Azure, we don't have to, but just to show you how to, let's say you're using something that's not Visual Studio. So task one will obtain a publishing profile, and then task number two will use the publishing profile to push code to our web app. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I go under the overview section here, and you see this option here that says get published profile. If I go ahead and click on that, that will download the publishing or the published profile, as you can see down here. That's saved in the download folder. So that's it right there. So now that we have this, what we'll do is we'll open Visual Studio and open the project that contains the code that we want to publish. So if I go File, Open Project Solution, I'll go to my eVolume on the lab files, on the lab 05, on the starter, and then Adatum website is what we want. And then that's the solution file. I'll open that. Excuse me. So that will open up the project that we want to publish to Azure Web App. So it's opened that now. And what we can do is if you want to, for example, view this, I can click on debug and click on start debugging. And what that should do is that it should open up a browser and display what the site looks like to us. So it is currently doing that. And here we go. So by the way, there's no time to go into this in this particular demo, but this is a really good tool in Visual Studio for testing your app. And there we go. And this is our application that's opened up in the browser. So for example, we can start clicking around here. We can click learn more. That takes us here. You can go on the contact and see what that looks like. So this is what we're going to be publishing to our web app. By the way, let's go have a quick look before I publish that. If I go back on the app services and then select my web app under overview, I should see the URL of my web app. If I click on that URL there, it just shows me a default page here. So this is what it currently looks like, and that's the URL. So going back to this, I can close this, and that should stop the debugging. So let's just go ahead and publish this to our web app. So to do that, what we'll do is we'll click Adatum website here, right click on it, and then go to publish. When I click on publish, now because I'm already logged into Visual Studio with my Azure account, it's already it can detect my Azure, or I can scroll to select my Azure profile or my web app profile and then just push it directly there. But in this case, let's use a profile. So if I click on create a new profile, I can go ahead and leave Microsoft Azure App Service, select existing, and just go ahead and deploy it that way. But that's not what we're doing for now. I'll go ahead and click on import profile here, and then I'll go ahead and click on publish. And then when I click on publish, it opens up, and then I have to go select my published profile, which if I go to my download folder, I have it there. I click open, and then it comes up with this, and then it starts to publish this code to the web app. So we'll just wait for that to finish and say it's successful, and I think it is successful now. So we'll be able to verify that the code has indeed been pushed down, and here we go. If I go back to my URL, or the URL of my web app, if I refresh that, I can see that the code has indeed been published to it. So that's nice. Let's move on. If I bring this up again, so that's what we've done. We've done this. So the very next step that we'll do is managing web apps. Is we're going to deploy a web app for staging. We're going to swap deployment slots, and then we're going to roll back the deployment. So we created a staging deployment slot earlier. We're going to deploy a separate code to it, and then we're going to swap it with the production, and then you see how that works. So let's go back to this. So what I'll do, if I go back to my Azure portal here, and I have my web app selected. So what I'll do is if I click on deployment slots and then click on my deployment slot here. So when I click on my deployment slot, my staging deployment slot, I can also get the publishing profile, not for the production web app itself, but for the staging deployment slot. If I click on that, that has already downloaded that. So that for the staging. So then let's go back to Visual Studio and let's go to open a new solution. So open project solution again to the E volume. Let's go on the lab files, on the lab 05, on the starter. And this time around, we're not going to be publishing the Adatum website, but the new Adatum website. So maybe our developers have worked on the codes, they've come up with a new website. Now we want to stage it and test. So if I go ahead and select that, the new Adatum website. Okay, so I think that's open now. If we wanted to, I could go click and click on debug, same way that we did for the earlier one. And you will notice that this new one has a different, oh, we are on the wrong one. So I'm not sure if I opened that correctly. So let's go back. Let's go on the file, open and project solution, new Adatum website, and open this. I'll close this. Let's start debugging that. I'm not sure if there's a difference between them. Not that that's definitely not different. Let's have a look at what's going on here. Okay, I'm not sure why the color scheme wasn't that different. So I could probably go on the index.cs HTML here and probably just make a bit of change on the here. I'll say staging and I'll save that. Then I'll right click on Adatum website and go ahead and click on publish. But this time around I will create a new profile again, select import profile, select publish, go under my downloads directory, and then this time I'll select my staging publish file, not the production one that I used earlier. So I select the staging one, and then it's going to instantly start pushing that code out to that. And you can see what the URL is here. So we can get to that also from once it finishes open here. So you can see what this looks like here. If I go back to the staging slot, I can click on that link also, and you can see that it's different. It's got a different color scheme to this. So we're good so far. The next thing that we'll do, according to the steps that we're following here, is let's go swap the deployment slot. So we have the production slot that we've deployed into, we have the staging slots that we've just deployed into, then we're going to swap them, and then we're going to use them to roll back, just like you would do if you were testing view code input. You want to test a view code in production, and then if you saw an unexpected error, you can easily roll back. So to do that, let's go to Azure portal and then go to under App Services and then select my app service there. So when I select my app service, so let's go here. Over here we have swap air. If I go ahead and click on swap, it's going to ask me and say what do I want to swap with what. So the source, I'm going to change that to staging. And the destination, I'm going to change that to production. So I'm swapping staging to production. And then if I click OK to that, and then wait for that to complete. So once the swap completes, we'll see what that looks like. So I may pause the recording here, but I don't think it should take too long. Just a few more seconds. If it's not completed, let's pause it. Okay, pause it. Okay, so the swap operation completed successfully. If I close this, then if I go back, so this is the staging. If I go ahead and refresh this, you'll notice that it'll be different. So what was production now has been swapped to staging. If I go to the production site, and then if I refresh this, what was staging has been swapped into production. So that's good. We've got that all going, looking nice. So what if we've made a mistake, we've seen an error, now we need to quickly swap back. So that's one of the advantages of deployment swap. So I can go back to my Azure web app and then click on swap again. By the way, we can do the swap using PowerShell also. So I can click on swap again and then swap staging to production again and click OK. And that will just perform the swap back. And that's the rollback. So let's see. I'll pause the recording. Once it finishes, I'll come back. So the swap operation completed. If I go back to my staging and then if I refresh that, now it's back. And if I go to my production and refresh that, now it's back. So that's good. So we're at a very good point here, because what I'll do is I'll stop this recording now and I'll carry on in another video. So in the other video, we'll carry on from where we are. We'll deploy another web app to another region, and then we'll use Traffic Manager, which can allow us to load balance and do redundancy across regions. And we're going to configure a Traffic Manager profile. We're going to add the necessary endpoints, and then we're going to test and see how Traffic Manager works. So thanks very much for staying with me in this video, and I'll see you in the next recording. Bye for now.